Hello, today we are going to talk about lesbian, gay, and queer criticism. We are going to talk about each criticism and further questions that we have during this presentation. This is presented by Abedon Zadrieli, Augusto Cesar, Handsome Victor, and me. So, in the first place, we are going to talk about the marginalization of lesbians and gay men. So, according to Tyson, for many centuries, lesbians and gay were marginalized both in social life and in the literally field. Um, the LGBTQ authors were forced to hide their identity in order to be published or taken seriously. So, gay and lesbians characters were portrayed negatively and tragically or invisibly. And in traditional literary criticism, dominated by white heterosexual men, completely ignored queer experience and desires, maintaining the pure canon of a heteronormity. So, in this marginalization occurs in three mainly levels, that is the erasure of LGBTQ authors. The works were excluded, censored, or reinterpreted as a universal to hide the homoerotic content, the distortion of queer characters and themes. And when gay or lesbian presence is corrected by critics, interpreted as a friendship or envy, that it's shown in Lord of Rings, right? That is Sam and Frodo, and this one that is the picture of Dorian Gray, that is the friendship about Dorian and Basil. And the last one is the silencing of homoerotic desires. Authors has to use codes, metaphors, and ambiguities to express forbidden feelings. So, as example, I brought here two types of content, two types of literally contents. That is Redcliffe Hall, that the Well of Loneliness, that is the first openly lesbian novel in English, and this novel was banished for obscenity. In the critical reading, they say that it shows a suffering of a lesbian woman rejected by the society. This is a milestone in lesbian visibility, and the other one is the picture of Dorian Gray that I talked about. The homoeroticism was disguised in a aesthetic admiration. The author, the author of this book was arrested for indecency of being gay. So, in this proposal that I'm talking about, the lesbian and gay criticism seeks to recover and reevaluate these silenced voices. So, this criticism proposed the reinterpretation of classics from the perspective of normative sexuality, the inclusion of the queer authors in tests and in literally curriculum, the exposure of the power, and last but not least, the exposure of power structures such as religion, social, and political fields that marginalized this decent sexualities. So, first of all, we are going to start with lesbian criticism.
Okay, now I'm going to be talking about lesbian criticism, which is one of the most important branches of literary criticism focused on representation, identity, and power. Lesbian criticism, according to Tyson, examines how the experiences and desires of women who love women are represented or erased in literature. Okay, it deals with two layers of oppression: the sexism and hetero privilege, meaning that the idea that heterosexuality is seen as the social norm of the era. Adrian Rage explains that in many works, love between women is disguised as friendship, as Gay said by Yasmin. This approach gives visibility to those voices that challenges how patriarchy and heteronormativity shape women's stories. Now we're going to be hearing about gay criticism from Henton.
Differently, we saw in the lesbians, the gay does not don't have the focus to define homosexuality, because in that time in 1992 don't have the concept to define homosexuality, because the man that had a relationship with the man does not was homosexuality, because the concept and the view about this term is the different that we have today. The word homosexual is associated for a long time with the with the medical of psychology discord, and the author difference the and the author make a difference about the homosexuality and the drag queen. The author says the drag queen are gays men who dress in drag on a regular basis or do it professionality, because the drag is the occupation, and the gay is was a way of life. And she they end the topic with the phrase, "in the night of the iguana," says that we all reach a point in our lives, sooner or later, where we must settle for something that works for us. She's speaking not just the gay community, but into the human community. This phrase talking about just not about the gays or the homosexual, but for all peoples, remind you of your life, about your choices, or the way that the person want you to follow in your life. Next slide.
We follow up with queer criticism, which is another branch of LGBTQ, not just literary but mediatic analysis in general. And the difference between queer criticism and gay and lesbian criticism lies in the fact that queer criticism does not focus itself only on sexuality, but it also analyzes the gender identity, the performance. It deconstructs masculinity, femininity, gender roles. It speaks on androgyny, and just in general, it analyzes more than just sexuality and focuses itself on gender. Through queer criticism, we can analyze characters in different lights and simultaneously. So you can have a queer analysis of a character in which you focus on their bisexuality, their lesbianism, their homosexuality, but at the same time, you analyze them as an allegory for example, transgender people, non binary identities, androgyny, intersexuality, anything of the sort. You can have this simultaneous analysis of personality, sexuality, performance, gender, and just everything as a whole at the same time. And through queer criticism, we can also analyze stories that do not have themes of sexuality and gender to see different facets of characters, which means that we can view different ways of how a character's personalities manifests, how their actions are guided by through the lenses of queer criticism. Moving on, we have shared features of lesbian, gay, and queer criticism. We have four common goals, which is to deconstruct heteronormativity, to break down the sexual and gender role-ish norm of heterosexuality and cisgender, which means that we will just analyze things like such as androgyny, breaking down monogamy into polygamy, things of the sort, same-sex attraction. Speaking of just religious everything, you can utilize queer criticism to view anything and to break down any sort of heteronormative viewings that there can be in society, historical, religious, anything. You, the goals, another goal is to reclaim queer voices and authors by ways of queer criticism, like we have seen in Yasmin's Albedones Enhances parts of the presentation. We see that nowadays we have a focus on speaking about these authors, speaking on Oscar Wilde, speaking about Judith Butler, authors that were ostracized people in general that were ostracized for their sexuality or their gender identity. We also analyze, there is also the goal of analyzing representation and desire in literature. We try to see through these lenses, we find characters who we can identify with, we can find comfort in, and we can find community within these characters and these spaces of queer analysis, of LGBTQ plus analysis. We also promote diversity, visibility, and inclusion by letting these characters be seen through other lenses, by allowing other ways of existence to be seen and accepted and analyzed. We have a few shared methods, which is a close reading and coded language. We have argos that are dialects of queer people, such as Polari. We have Pajubá, we have gay slang and gay lingo, which are just different ways of coded expressions, which means that there are certain words that, when utilized in specific contexts, can have different significance. Like we have, an example would be, for example, the word bear. Bear we usually see as the animal, but in the gay community specifically, we have bear as not the animal, but rather as a type of body, which is usually a bigger, burlier, more hairy man, which is just an example of gay slang, of gay lingo. Another method is focusing on identity, community, and resistance, by which we mean that when analyzing characters through LGBTQ plus lenses, we focus on their identity, not exactly the plot or their narrative. We try to relate these two things and link them. We try to analyze the narrative perspective through the identity perspective. We try to see how a character's queer coding can change how you see a certain action of theirs in the story. And LGBTQ plus criticism can be, and usually is, cross-disciplinary, because you have the historical aspect, the sociological aspect, the psychological aspect, and the gender studies aspect of it all. But when you analyze a book, you're not analyzing just the content of the book, you're analyzing everything that surrounds it. And that is that is especially true when it comes to LGBTQ plus analysis of and criticism, because you're analyzing what historical moment you were in, this book was written in, what historical moment the author was, the social context in which the author was raised and born and grew up and wrote this book in, the psychological aspect. You see how a character or an author hide if they fear being queer, if they abhor it, if they are disgusted by it, if they accept it, if they don't fear being queer itself, but rather the reaction of the public and whatnot. And also the gender studies aspect, in which you just analyze how a character identifies and how different actions, portrayals, actions, how they speak, how they act, how they perform their own identity, their masculinity, their femininity, their androgyny, and how that changes the context of the story. Moving on.
So in this part of the presentation, it is key questions critics ask. So Lois Tyson devotes part of the chapter of the book to practical questions that helps readers apply lesbian, gay, and queer criticism in analysis of tests. So when someone gets those tests, there are some questions, and these questions are: does the text represent or silence LGBTQ characters and themes? Does the work reinforce or challenge heteronormativity? Are there homoerotic subtexts or coded representations? How do gender and sexuality interact? And how does the historical and cultural context influence queer representation? So, these questions serve as a tool for critical reading. So, this is not a matter of labeling characters gays or lesbians or queers, but this is an investigation about how the test deals with sexuality, desires, and identity. So, this author proposed these questions to help us to review um, what the traditional readers ignores. So he brings us to think a little further than the original tests, like I said in the beginning, the normative white man, heterosexual man. And these questions to gender and sexuality in norms and tests, and explored the power of language and as a tool of repression and or libertination. So Tyson argues that any test can be read as a queer way because every test express or repress ideas about identity and desire. So moving on with our friend Hanson.
Go ahead. And in the book, the author make another questions about these topics. And the one is there queer silence? Is there queer silencing on recording? It's necessary for us thinking about this question. Is there queer silence or queer recording? Is the first question. Is the first question that author do on this part of the book. Are the characteristic genders, feminine or masculine, represented rigidly, or are there ambiguities, inconsciencies? The next one is, what characters are marginalized by sexual norm? How do this affect the actions and narratives? And the last one is, does the context challenge heteronormative does the content challenge heteronormative or does in the enforce it? This question is for us readers or when we watching some media for us make reflections about these questions. If we thinking about these questions when we consume some media. Next one.
In conclusion, Tyson reminds us that lesbian, gay, and queer criticism goes far beyond the idea of representing LGBTQ identities. They are actually about understanding how sexuality functions as a structure of power inside literature, shaping the way the characters are written, how relationships are interpreted, and even what considered normal or acceptable. These approaches also have a political and ethical side of it. They work as a form of literary justice, social justice, because they make visible what has been silenced for or excluded from traditional readings. When we use these perspectives to reread or some classical or canonical texts, we often find new layers of meaning, things that traditional criticism ignored or couldn't see. So, in the end, lesbian, gay, and queer criticism are not just about inclusion, they transform how we understand literature itself. So, with that, we thank you all for watching our presentation and for being here until the end. Thank you.